Everybody, welcome once again to another edition of Quick Trivia with Mike. It's that weekly game show right here on channel 955 where we test your knowledge of facts. Some of them are a little bit more obscure and historical in nature. Some of them are pretty contemporary, and we just see how much of it you know. Kind of brain teasers, if you will. I'm your host and the Quizmaster, Mike Brever. We're seen each and every week right here on channel 955. The first time at 11 o'clock on Fridays, but you know, we're seen multiple times over the weekend. We'll tell you a little bit later in the show how you can play along and maybe enter the winner's circle. We're going to find out in just a couple of minutes. But right now, I do want to take the opportunity to thank my good friends Laura Wengler, Scott McFerrin, and Cooper Ledvina for filling in for me last week. I had some unexpected family issues that I needed to deal with, and I was off for an extended weekend. So my thanks to them. They did a great job, and I sincerely appreciate it. But let's take a look at the 3 questions that they posed and give you the answers, and then we'll get into the 3 new questions for the coming week. First of all, from Laura Wengler, we had a little bit of a background on some opera performers of the day back in the 60s. She specifically was speaking about a Ms. Price, who was a very famous performer at that time. Consistently sold out the Metropolitan Opera in the earlier years. The question was, how much did Ms. Price earn in comparison to other performers of the day? As you know, Ms. Price was African American. The other performers that Laura was talking about were not. Well, the answer is that the disparity wasn't that great, but there was, in fact, a disparity. Ms. Price was paid $2,750 per performance. That was pretty much on a par with other stars of the era, Joan Sutherland, Maria Callas, Renata Tebaldi. But the highlight of the 60s, Bridget Nielsen, was very unique in singing both Italian and Wagnerian roles. She earned a little bit over $3,000 per performance. As you can see, the disparity wasn't that much, but there was a disparity nonetheless. That was the answer to question number 1. Question number 2. This one came from Scott McFerrin. Talked a little bit about the history of politics and women in national politics. Talked about the fact that in 1972, Shirley Chisholm was the first black candidate for a major party to seek a party nomination. She actually ran on the Democratic ticket. The Green Party is a little bit more liberal. They ran a female candidate 3 times. Cynthia McKinnon, Jill Stein ran. Jill Stein actually ran twice on the Green Party. Kind of a trick question, though. Scott wanted to know who was the first woman to be elected president. Well, I mean, there's a tip-off there. You now know that he's not talking about the United States of America. We've had candidates, but we've never had a female president. I'm going to really have a hard time with the pronunciation of this name. So bear with me here, and maybe we'll work our way through this. But the first woman elected president was, in fact, from a foreign country. It was the island nation of Iceland. Vigdis Finnbogadóttir. She won the 1980 presidential election, as well as 3 other times was she reelected to become the longest serving non-hereditary female head of state in history. 16 years and 0 days. Exited office on the same day that she entered office in the calendar year. So 4 terms, 16 years in office. Vigdis Finnbogadóttir of Iceland. And there you have it. The first woman to serve as a president of a nation. Wasn't the United States. Question number 2, that was. Question number 3. I believe this one came from Cooper Ledvina. Told you a little bit about architecture and major monuments and things like that in Washington, D.C. He specifically wanted to know who was the architect of the Lincoln, covering a site covering 2 acres next to the Lincoln Memorial. Kind of a complicated question there, but Cooper did a little bit of research, and we think it could have been a little bit easier for all of you as well. Thousands of designs were submitted. Entry number 1026 was designed by Maya Lin. Maya Lin was the design architect for the main Navy and munitions building site, with the mission buildings behind the Navy building. So there you have it. Those were the answers to the 3 questions from last week. Once again, my thanks to all of Laura Wengler and Cooper and Scott for filling in for me. I thought they did a great job. Those are the answers to their questions. The winner from last week, turns out it was none other than Kelvin Schrader. Kelvin Schrader returns to the winner's circle for the week. Kelvin Schrader did not identify the bumper music. In fact, nobody identified the bumper music. We're going to keep that. We may use that bumper music again in the future. It's kind of an acoustical version of a better known song. So we're going to hang on to that since nobody guessed it. So that's the wrap up of last week's show. Congratulations, Kelvin Schrader, our champion for the week. Your picture is going to show up on channel 955 during this entire week. Now it's time for our weekly intermission. Time for you to go grab a cup of coffee, maybe get a donut. Come on back. We'll enjoy the second half of the show. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Supposedly, Cousteau and his cronies invented the idea of putting walkie-talkies into the helmet. But we made ours with a special rabbit ear on the top so we could pipe in some music.
The Belafonte, home to Team Sisu. Skilled crew of deep-sea divers, adventurers, documentary filmmakers.
Action!
Led by internationally renowned oceanographer Captain Steve Zissou, expert on every aspect of marine life.
Swamp leeches, everybody! Check for swamp leeches. Nobody else got hit? I'm the only one? What's the deal?
But there remains one form of life about which Captain Zissou knows very little.
You're supposed to be my son, right? I want you on Team Zissou.
The answer's yes.
Well, it's got to be. I'm already a red cap and a Speedo. This will be Team Zissou's most ambitious adventure to date. I'm going to go on an overnight drunk, and in 10 days, I'm going to set out to find the shark that ate my friend and destroy it.
What would be the scientific purpose of killing it?
Revenge.
You must swear, legally swear, that you'll not kill that shark.
Split into two groups. I'll take Ned, Ogata, and Wolodarski.
Thanks. Thanks a lot for not picking me.
We're being led on an illegal suicide mission.
I'm gonna fight you, Steve.
You never say, I'm going to fight you, Steve. You just smile and act natural, and then you sucker punch it. Are you finding what you were looking for out here with me? I hope so. Quiet out there tonight. Can you hear the jack whales singing?
Beautiful. I wonder what they're saying.
Well, that was the sludge tanker over there, but there you go.
Welcome back to the second half of our show, everybody. We've already given you the answers to the 3 questions from last week, and we've identified Kelvin Schrader as our weekly champion. As we pointed out, nobody who played last week got the bumper music. Getting the bumper music actually is a tiebreaker. Well, Kelvin was the only one who got all 3 questions correct, so we didn't need the tiebreaker, so even though no one got it right, don't need to talk about the bumper music. Other than that, we're going to hang on to it. We may bring that bumper music back for a future show. See if anyone can figure it out in the future. Let's get into the 3 questions for this week now, shall we? I'm taping this on Holy Week. I'm actually taping it on Thursday. You all know Sunday is going to be Easter Sunday. I've kind of gotten in the habit lately of looking for topical questions to ask you on our trivia. We're going to begin this week with a little bit about the Easter season, specifically how Hollywood has interpreted the Easter season. We're going to look at the movie Easter Parade, debuted in 1948. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the background of the movie and some of the facts and the trivia behind it. It was that the wonderful movie that starred Fred Astaire and Judy Garland. Peter Lawford also was in the movie. Just a wonderful trio of very, very talented people there. It made for a memorable movie with just absolutely fabulous music. Goes back to that era when people would come up with 10 or 15 songs and then write a script around it. They'd have a musical and it'd be a big smash hit. Well, again, this debuted in 1948, shortly after the end of World War II. People were looking for some lighthearted entertainment, something to take their minds off of the troubles we've just experienced earlier in the decade. Well, you all know, once again, that Fred Astaire was the lead actor in the show, primarily because he was a song and dance man as well. Ironically, though, what you may not know is that Gene Kelly was originally scheduled to play the lead. He unfortunately broke his ankle when he stamped his foot in anger after losing in a volleyball game. Just something fun he was doing on the side in addition to his Hollywood career. Because he broke his ankle and filming had to go on, he suggested that the studio replace him with Fred Astaire. Sid Charisse was up for the role of Nadine, but a torn ligament in either one or both of her knees, forced her to drop out, and she was ultimately replaced by Ann Miller. And that's how the leads came about. Ironically, you know, I've actually mentioned this quote to you in the past. Gene Kelly was one time being interviewed, I forget on just what program it was, but he was asked how historians may look at the golden era of Hollywood musicals, and he said, 100 years from now, people will look back on the golden era of Hollywood musicals, and the only dancer they will recognize is Fred Astaire. Quite a compliment from a person as talented as Gene Kelly. To produce the movie, originally Vincent Minnelli was slated to direct. He was Judy Garland's husband at the time. Judy Garland's psychiatrist, actually, her psychiatrist got involved in setting up a movie, advised that they not work together, and another producer was selected. The film actually deleted a musical number, Mr. Monotony, in which Judy Garland wears the same costume she would immortalize 2 years later in the movie Summer Stock that came out in 1950. In the number Get Happy, the costume was her famous costume of a man's tuxedo coat and hat. So actually it was in Easter Parade, but it ended up getting cut. Easter Parade was MGM's highest grossing film of 1948. It was not the highest grossing film to come out of Hollywood in 1948, however. This picture began its run, was the second biggest money-making film of the year. It followed Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and Dorothy Lamore's Road to Rio, which actually launched nationally on Christmas Day of 1947. So Road to Rio was number one, and then Easter Parade was number two. Both kind of musicals. As you can see, Hollywood was really playing into the nostalgia post-World War II. The song Easter Parade was actually seen twice before in Irving Berlin productions. The first was a 1933 Broadway review as Thousands Cheer. It also was in the Irving Berlin movie Holiday Inn, which premiered in 1942. There's a very, very famous cameo in Easter Parade. Jules Munchin made his film debut. He plays the waiter who gives a very entertaining description of the menu items, specifically the making of a salad. If you remember, he sniffs the herbs that go into it and swish and swish. Wonderful play. If you haven't seen Easter Parade, you have to see it just for that as well. A year later, he actually had a major role in his very first film. Played one of the three sailors on Leave in New York City with Gene Kelly and Frank Sinatra in On the Town, which again debuted in 1949. What a lot of people don't know is that back in that era, Hollywood would use these cameos by people as screen tests. This went very well. Jules Munchin was in fact then signed to a concert, and that's why he showed up in On the Town, because he did so well in Easter Parade. The audience response was just remarkable. One of the funniest things about the movie that I actually enjoy, you have to pay attention very closely though. Peter Lawford calls Nadine on the phone several times during the film. Several times. Every time he actually gives a different phone number, he's making it up as they're filming the movie. Pay attention closely next time. You'll find out that there is no logic to the phone number that he gives every time, and it became kind of a humorous anecdote. Another famous story about Easter Parade is that this was the second time in her film career that a character in a movie comes up to Judy Garland and says, "Why didn't you tell me I was in love with you?" The first time was, of course, Gene Kelly. in the 1942 production of For Me and My Gal. Frank Sinatra was actually originally supposed to be in this movie as well. He was originally cast as Jonathan Harrow III, but didn't end up making the final cut. There was enough star power in the movie as it was, so I don't think it really mattered. If you get channel 148, if you have Sirius XM radio and you have channel 148, you know it's radio classics, old radio shows from the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. I listen to it a lot of times on my way into work or my way going home. There was an adaptation of Easter Parade done March 22nd, 1951, with Judy Garland and Fred Astaire. You can actually catch that adaptation. It was done for the Screen Guild Theater. You can actually catch that adaptation once in a while, seasonally on channel 148. You'll also hear Judy Garland's Meet Me in St. Louis seasonally on channel 148 as well. Now that I've given you a little bit about the trivia of the movie, let me ask you my question for the week. The story is set between two Easters, a 12-month time frame that begins on an Easter and ends on an Easter. The storyline closely or loosely follows the season of Ziegfeld Follies. My question to you: what year is the first Easter that begins the storyline, and what year is the second Easter that ends the storyline? That's my first trivia question for the day. Easter Parade begins on what Easter and ends on what Easter? Question number one. Question number two. Not only is this Easter week, but for our friends of Jewish heritage or ethnicity, culture, religion, this is Passover week. So we're going to take a look at a couple questions about Passover. And we're going to have a trivia question for you about Passover. Let me point out to you that although my great-great-grandmother on my father's side, based on her name, her maiden name, we believe that she was probably Jewish. I am neither of Jewish heritage or culture or faith. A lot of the words I'm going to use in this narration right now, I'm going to have difficulty pronouncing. For those of you who are of Jewish heritage, culture, or faith, my sincere apologies. I mean no offense, but we're going to work through this, and maybe call me this next week and let me know how I really messed up here. You know that the story of Passover is actually contained, the key elements of it are contained in the Old Testament of the Bible. In the book of Exodus, it really focuses on the main character of Moses, who led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt to freedom in the promised land of Canaan. There are several things that happen that allow Moses to free all the Israeli slaves from Egypt's grip. There were a series of plagues that came upon the nation of Egypt by God to encourage the Egyptian Pharaoh to let the Israelis go. Killing the firstborn son of everybody. And as we all know, the angel of death passed over the Jewish homes because the Jewish residents were informed by God through Moses to post lamb's blood on their doorposts. And that told the angel of death that this was a house of believers. And so only the firstborn of Egyptians were plagued by the angel of death. Of course, you know there were locusts, and the Red Sea turned to blood temporarily. A series of plagues that came on as a result of that. One of the traditions in the Jewish culture is that during the Passover season, Eating a matzah is a staple. Now, if you've ever had matzah, you know you're not going to get fat eating matzah. It is kind of a staple, but not necessarily a filling meal. But that's what is a tradition. And again, as I said, it's the story as contained in the Bible of the Jews' exodus from Egypt and their journey to Canaan, the promised land. Even contemporarily, there are traditions that come forth. For example, during Seder, a Jewish family that is gathering to celebrate will typically leave a seat empty, and it's being left empty for the prophet Elijah to join them in their feast. Of course, you know, once again, Passover is the main focal point of it is Moses and his efforts to do this. You know, the Jewish calendar does not follow the movement of the sun in the sky. It's a lunar calendar. And as a result of that, their months and days are not necessarily the same as ours. That's why Christian holidays, which follow Christian holidays or holy days, especially surrounding Easter, don't fall on the same calendar days every year because they're following the Jewish lunar calendar. Passover actually takes place on the 15th of Nisan. This year, of course, you know that March and April are the focal points for Lent and Easter, and of course Passover as well. Again, we've already spoken about matzah and how it's a tradition during Passover. Other things as well, something that's commonly used as, and again, this is one of those words I apologize for, maror, what is served or what is used as maror when serving meat? Typically horseradish, not necessarily my favorite. Another tradition during the celebration of Passover is who asks the questions at Seder, and of course it is the youngest person present. Passover typically has not followed a political bent in the United States, but the first United States president to observe a Passover Seder at the White House was former President Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States. Again, speaking about the menu during the Seder plate, the bitter herbs on the plate typically represent life as a slave in Egypt. The sweet apple mixture on a Passover Seder plate called charoset is also part of it. The middle days of Passover are called Hal HaMoed. So a lot of things about Jewish culture lead into the Christian celebration of Easter, but not all. And so I ask you, our Passover trivia today. Again, the book of Exodus in the Bible, which the Old Testament plays a role in Jewish culture and faith as it does in Christian culture and faith. The final day of Passover celebrates what specific event in the book of Exodus? The final day of Passover celebrates what specific event in the celebration of Passover as told in the book of Exodus? The final day. That is question number 2. Question number 3. We're going to leave historical and topical by calendar and look at another issue that will play a role in the month of April. April, as you know, has a focus on the environment. Earth Day is coming up in about 3 weeks. And so I thought it might be fun to start introducing some topics about conservation and environmentalism. We're going to take a look today at plastic, the use of plastic, and the abuse of the environment that sometimes or usually comes from plastic. Typically, you know, the greatest use of plastic is grocery stores. They provide essential food by using single-use plastic packaging from their stores. Single use, that's the key. A lot of times these things are used and discarded immediately, including the plastic bags that we carry our groceries home in. What can we do to reduce some of this plastic waste that is really affecting the environment? Well, the first thing is you don't have to use the plastic bags. You can bring your own reusable bags. Now, I have to preface this by saying that during the age of COVID, grocery stores have forbidden you from doing this. You have to use their bags. That was to help prevent the spread of coronavirus. But when we get past this and we reach herd immunity later this year, start using your own reusable bags. It's really good for the environment. A second thing we can do about plastic is avoid single-use plastic containers that house our food items. If possible, buy items that are housed in glass containers or paper. Glass is actually easily reused as a recyclable commodity, and paper is actually much friendlier to the environment. So those are much better than plastic. Single-use plastics make up roughly half of our global annual plastic production, and typically are thrown away within minutes of use. Half of our global production of plastic is thrown away within minutes of its being used. France, in January of 2020, banned the use of single-use cups and plates in January 2020. I know there's an effort worldwide to try to get more nations to try to do that because of the 380 million tons of plastic pollution created every year. The second most common source comes from food packaging. Now, you all know, based on what I've shared with you, that glass and paper are much more friendly to the environment than plastic. According to a study from the Helen MacArthur Foundation, how much of the plastic that is produced on an annual basis is actually recycled? We know that most ends up in a landfill. How much is actually recycled of the plastic that is produced every year, according to a study from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation? Is it 14% of the plastic produced annually? Is it 24% of the plastic produced annually? Or is it 34% of the plastic produced annually? How much of the plastic we produce annually is recycled, according to a study from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation? 14, 24, or 34%? Those are our three questions for the week. You all know how to win by this time. Get your answers to me for these questions by noon on Monday. You can email me at mbrever@eastcastleplace.com. Call me at 963-8425. Write the answers down on a sheet of paper, put them in my mailbox behind the reception desk, or you can slide them under my door. Although these days, my office is still adjusting to the heat changes inside the building, my door is always open. The only thing worth stealing in my office are the answers from other players. So feel free to walk in, put your answers on the desk in my office or on the little conference table there. I'll have them on Monday. Maybe you will be in the winner's circle just like Kelvin Schrader this week. How do you win if two or more of you get the same number of questions correct? Well, we have a tiebreaker. It's the bumper music. The music at the beginning of the show and the music that's replayed at the end of the show. Identify that bumper music and you could win the tiebreaker and be in the winner's circle for this week. That's all we have for our show this week. As always, I'd like to thank the president of ECTV, Tyler Gudex, our executive producer, Laura Wengler, my producer and cameraman, Scott McFerrin, and of course, as always, my artistic director, the incomparable Cooper Ledvina. All four of them really make this show the success that it is, specifically Cooper and Scott. If you like anything about this show, their fingerprints are all over it. On behalf of all of us here at ECTV, I do want to wish all of you a happy end to the Passover season, a happy Easter. I hope you get to spend some time with family and friends, at least visit by Zoom or by phone or maybe in person now that we're allowing guests into East Castle Place in your apartments by appointments. So check at the front desk how that is handled, and maybe you can spend a little bit of time with family this holiday season. That's all we have for our show this week. I hope to see you again next week. I do want to thank all of you for inviting me into your home for this half hour. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. Until next week, I ask you all to please stay safe, stay smart, and be patient. You can see we're opening up a little bit more every week. Soon we'll be able to enjoy all that East Castle Place hospitality again. So long, everybody.